Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, as are the NBA and NHL playoffs. There are so many ways to get in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball to the NBA, the NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Penn State fans, are you feeling confident that the Nittany Lions can win college football's national championship next season? Lock in your futures bet at betonline.ag today. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. I'm Tom Hannafin. He's Justin King. Quiet times right now here in the month of May as we're just counting down to training camp and Penn State kicking things off against Nevada to open the season as I think I saw it as a 43.5-point favorite. So looking forward to that game in September, whenever that's. Is it on August or September? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. We're all looking forward to football once again. A handful of roster updates at this point in the year. It's a quiet time outside of the recruiting trail, which Penn State continues to do extremely well for the class of 26, 27, and 28, at least on paper. A lot of excitement there. We're going to get to some of those recruits in a little bit. I want to start off with wide receiver Trebor Pena, the transfer from Syracuse, recently got on campus, enrolled, starting classes, all that sort of stuff. And you and I have talked about this with the Trebor Pena acquisition, is that it's encouraging, it's intriguing, it's exciting. You're filling the war chest, so to speak. You're filling up that wide receiver room with as much available talent as you can through the transfer portal with Kyron Hudson from USC, Devontae Ross from Troy. You add in Pena. Which of them has the highest ceiling? All that sort of stuff. But the big differentiator is Ross and Hudson have been on campus for, 5 months now? Pena's just getting here now, 1 year of eligibility, and has expectations on him to produce. So from your experience working with LAG Sports Group, working with the Penn State football program once upon a time, what is that acclimation process like for a player, a student athlete, to get on campus in May, be expected to show out in August at training camp, really, and then be ready to hit the ground running in September?
It's a fast process, and I think it's a microwave process, right? When you talk about preparation for the season. And it's one of the main reasons that when I was looking, even coming out of high school 20 years ago, I mean, the age, right? Wow.
Come on.
But no, I was thinking of the same thing. If I would get on campus in June, how would I ever be able to play in August? So I'm like, I can't pick up a playbook in 3 months or acclimate myself to the speed. So it was like, okay, I need to be there in January. So that's coming out of high school and building in that developmental curve that I'm gonna have to go through. As a senior, I'm starting to think if I'm a senior and I'm going into another place, I'm game ready. I'm probably in shape for my off season, and I just gotta learn the like essentially my route tree and things that I need to be able to do. And sometimes if you have that experience coming into it, it gives you a chance to play free because you're kind of you have a whole bunch of experience from previous offenses, and then you're able to just inject yourself with all of the previous information that you have and just kind of piece in the new offense and just play fast. Because like, I mean, there's no point in trying to master the offense in 3 months because that's not going to happen. But it's the coach's job and his job to a receiver Pena to make sure he understands what he needs to do to play fast in these microwavable situations.
Coaches Pena, Andrew Aller, like there's a lot of pieces to this, especially when you bring in a wide receiver. Is it important to limit expectations for Pena? Because I think so many people, like ESPN, I think has ranked him as the #1 impact transfer from the spring cycle, something to that effect. Like Pena's getting a lot of love from the national media in terms of the acquisition, the fit, all that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to limit expectations with this player, but I think it's natural that Penn State fans want to gravitate towards like, oh, okay, you know, Hudson, Ross, Pena, one of these guys is going to be the guy, the answer at wide receiver, that sort of thing. But being realistic of how much work can Pena actually get done in the next handful of months before training camp?
I mean, he's played 4 years of football. I mean, college football. So I think from that standpoint, like he has experience and understands what he needs to do to prepare for a football game. Now, when it comes down to it, I mean, yeah, I think the expectation should be there. If you're a senior coming into the season and you're asking for whatever amount of money, you should understand that there's expectations that come along with that. So no, I think there should be expectations and he should feel pressure.
He should. And I mentioned Aller, you know, it was one thing that we've talked about it before at wide receiver. Only 3 players who caught passes last season at wide receiver are back on the roster this year, whether they have departed through the transfer portal, graduation, all that sort of stuff. And then it's like, all right, you drop Hudson and Ross in Aller's lap. And it's like, great, you had winter workouts and spring practices to get acclimated to these guys. And it sounds like Devontae Ross has been so far the stronger performing of the two. Not to say Hudson has done badly, but Ross shined during the blue-white game and was doing very well through spring practices. Now it's saying to Drew Aller, it's like, hey, here's another transfer guy, talented, but you got to get used to him too. And by the way, you know, like spring practices are over. So is it kind of dumping it in the quarterback's lap of like, you guys got to find time?
Pay for play, baby. That's what happens when you get money. You got responsibilities and expectations. Fulfill them. That's all I got for it.
That's fair. Do you think, do you think, here's the other element to this, and you talk about getting used to the offense. Is this a particularly complicated scheme to be walking into in a matter of 3 months for a wide receiver under?
Well, I think that's
coordinator Andy Kotelnicki.
I think that's what makes Coach K such a prominent offensive coordinator in college football, is that you're able to use these different pieces and put them in positions that feel comfortable to play fast and be productive for your offense. That's where I mean, when you have those Jimmys and Joes versus X's and O's type coaches, where you might find a little bit of obstacle for a player that's coming into a system type of offensive coordinator, because like, hey, I have to learn the system or I'm not going to fit in. That's kind of happened with Cephas, right? He couldn't understand the system, things of that nature, couldn't get on the field, made the transition, terrible move for his career. But, you know, this guy, he's coming in with a different offensive coordinator that moves pieces around and reorganizes offenses based on matchups. So when you have an offensive coordinator that takes that approach from a Jimmy's and Joe's standpoint, if I'm a Jimmy and Joe, like I'm gonna trust that he's gonna put me in positions to do what I need to do. And I think that's to the credit of Coach Kotelnicki.
Very curious to see how he fits in a short amount of time. And again, like I feel like a broken record with this. It's going to be a lot of focus on the wide receivers in 2025, and they have to make the plays when they matter, I guess is the best way to put it. Because again, like this offense is going to be focused on running the football. So as much as we're like, oh God, you got to fill up the wide receiver room, it's like, yep, it's still going to be about number 10 and number 13, which is crazy. Very talented offensive line that's coming back, and you got one position that's really up for grabs there along that offensive line. So I'm curious to see how that competition goes into the summer and through August, and then August 30th, by the way, against Nevada is the first game of the season. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. Speaking of movement, I was talking about it before in terms of recruits. There was a reclassification. Defensive end Daniel Jennings has reclassified from the class of 2026 to 2025. I believe he's a 4-star, a lot of potential. He's tacked on, I believe, 20 pounds of mass in the last handful of months, is getting ready for this change. And you and I talked about it a little bit last year with Max Granville, who reclassified from 2024 to the class of 2025, actually played last year, has some expectations on him to contribute at that defensive end spot opposite to Dennis Sutton this upcoming season. Same with Zariah Fisher, who's been with the program since, I don't know, the 2000s at this point. Jalen Harvey as well, a young player. Anai White, the transfer from Texas A&M. So now you can maybe throw Daniel Jennings in the mix, but still a young player. And it just seems like this concept and this opportunity to reclassify is becoming more and more popular. Again, through your experience with LIG Sports Group, what does that reclassification process look like?
It first starts off with an evaluation of your kid and your goals, right? Like, I think if you have aspirations of playing high level sports, there's a physical requirement that's needed. And when you're coming through the development process in youth sports, things are separated by age. You're always competing against people of your same age bracket. But when you get into school, you compete against people of the same grade, right? And that's how you're classified. So as you're going through that process and you're developing, what happens is guys get to 7th and 8th grade, depending on where their birthday is, or if some parents are trying to give their kid a physical advantage over their other kids, or even catching up, might hold them back in 7th or 8th grade. So they have that year of maturation. Happens a lot in basketball and football because those are genetic-based sports, right? Like, or trait-based sports, be bigger, stronger, faster. And you see that a lot of times with a lot of the top athletes. I mean, a lot of top players that are coming through the game now, where like 15, 16-year-old freshmen, right? And they have all these offers. Oh, he has these offers. And it's like, yeah, because he's dominant against little kids. Now, the thing that gets interesting is that when those guys, whether there's a nice family infrastructure, they reclass, they get all their offers by junior year, they end up playing 3 years in high school because they make the adjustment back and get into the regular class. After they've gone through high school, they get all the offers, and now they kind of go back into the situation, only playing 3 years of high school. Bodies less beat up. And so there's nuance to it, and everybody's situation is different. Yeah, it's a tactic in the business, and it's something that's, I mean, you can't frown at. Is, I can't beat them, better join them. But if not, you got to know how to beat it. Because at one point there was a thing where like the NFL didn't want to take older players, but now that the NCAA removed like age limits and guys staying in college forever, we kind of forget like that 8th grader, or if a guy's getting to college at 19, we don't really care. I mean, guys are getting drafted or staying in college till they're 26, 27. So it changes the reclass implication. So if playing high level sports is a goal of yours, I mean, looking at reclass the right way is something that you can be beneficial, to say the least.
It's interesting because, and tell me what your experience has been, how much of it is motivated by a player seeing the opportunity to play now?
So it's interesting. I think there's a reclass in 8th grade, and there's an 8th grade reclass when you're kind of setting yourself up going into high school, when you're getting the offers and all they claim because you're playing it, you know, you're ahead of the curve. So when we like to recruit, we like to identify players early. So it's like picking out a dog at a breeder, right? The dog, the cub with the big paws. I'm gonna go with that pup, you know. And so when you have a guy that's older as a 9th grade, you're still looking at that classification as a 9th grader, even if he's 16. He's still a 9th grader with 4 more years to develop. So as a college player, as a college coach, I'm gonna offer that guy. Whatever happens, we might get him at 19, we might get him at 18, but regardless, like, he's at that point for this tranche of talent in these next 3-4 years to be at the top aspect of it. So from that, it's always interesting, because when you get those guys that are talented and have a claim early that are reclassed, and they're not really that good, they're just more dominant from a physical standpoint, but not really good players, you see that a lot because they don't continue to develop from the early acclaim and just natural gifted advantages that they have from just being older. So sometimes you get that with players. It used to happen a lot in Texas where guys were just maxed out, reclass, just all the way, fully developed person. And so that's what I'm always trying to preach. The goal is to be the best at 21, not 16. So whatever that looks like, if reclass fits in there, use it to your advantage. If it doesn't, be ready to compete against reclass players.
It's a very different situation than what Granville experienced last year, and that clearly you had Abdul Carter and Dennis Sutton. So it was like, you're not cracking the starting lineup. You might be able to get in there and be a rotational guy. And we did see him. I believe he played against SMU and Boise State in the college football playoff, if I'm not mistaken. So that was a situation where it was like, hey, you can reclassify and you can develop and grow through the season. There's no pressure on you to be like, you got to play week 1 or something like that. But like, hey, it'd be great if we had you in the back end. This feels like a different situation with Jennings just because the room is different. Abdul Carter leaving does create a void at that opposite defensive end spot. And just kind of looking at the DNs that are on the roster, you have Malachi Williams, the DN from Philadelphia, who's listed at 6'3", 250, Dennis Sutton. We've talked about Zariah Fisher. So many injuries, redshirt senior plus. Is this the year that it all comes together? Mason Robinson's a redshirt sophomore. Jalen Harvey is a redshirt freshman, 6'2", 246 out of Gaithersburg, Maryland. Bobby Mears, 6'4", 258, redshirt sophomore. Jordan Mayer, redshirt sophomore. Granville, we've talked about. Aiden Probst, redshirt freshman. Deshaun Burnett, freshman. Yvonne Kamaju, freshman from Burtonsville, Maryland, and then the aforementioned Anai White, who's a redshirt junior. He's 6'5", 264, is a big dude. So it's like, all right, you have all these unproven commodities at the defensive end spot opposite Dennis Sutton, and say it's that same path that Granville had last year, where it's like, hey, it's not right now. You're not going to start week 1. Sure, come in and compete, all that sort of stuff, develop and get into the strength and conditioning program, those sorts of things. I think the interesting thing now you're seeing with players that are reclassifying depends on where they go, because you could plausibly say Penn State could be in college football playoff games in December and January. So it's, hey, no one's expecting anything from you in September and October or even November potentially. It's that depth that I think it's these college football programs at the, in the top 15 that are really starting to think about, what is my roster going to look like in December and January? Penn State dealt with it. Notre Dame, Ohio State, everybody had injuries at that point in the season. Their team was vastly different than what they had that September. So I think that's a new thing. I don't know how much of your experience in the last few years you've seen that firsthand, of teams being like, yeah, we're trying to make sure we've got depth and guys that we can get in there at that point in the year.
Well, you see it a lot. I mean, I deal in each level of the ecosystem, whether it's 8th grade, going to high school going to college going to the pros. And a lot of the information I get from that recruiting scene, I mean, I get from the transfer portal climate, right? When I'm talking to coaches about what they're looking for, if they're going to lean in the portal or they're going to lean young. And then you can kind of track back on just their historical evidence of how they built their teams, and the teams that have more stability, and how you can set up a player to have success on how they're building or what they feel their roster looks like. And I think that's why you see the stability and success of Penn State, of not being so volatile in the transfer market and turnover. I think Clemson is another school like that. And you see the rankings that are coming out now that these teams are starting to move up the board in terms of expectation, because anything where you're dealing with 100+ players, man, you need stability and teamwork. Like, I know it's an individual sport and a team journey, and I'm always for the individual, but there's an art to having a successful football team. And it's just not to the benefit of the individual, but regardless of that, what people are building and that stability of how Penn State builds is very, very beneficial to putting winning product on the field.
You and I talked about it a little bit last week. Should Penn State be ranked number 1 entering the season for 2025? But as we sit at this point in May, from what you've heard and your experience with the team, how you feel about things?
I feel great. I mean, to be honest with you, like, I've gone to probably more campuses than I've been at in the past couple of years, and just seeing teams from just an eyeball standpoint. I mean, again, I always say personnel guy and background, so I'm always looking at just the raw physics of the game. And Penn State is at a level where I think they have the raw materials to compete for a national title. Now it's just all the gray areas that need to be filled in, lack of experience some places, transfer portal receivers. And I think that's a critical thing that you brought up, is that Penn State's a running football team, but good is the enemy of great. And we got to the semifinals last year, and our receivers didn't have a catch. So in order to, pick that up and get over that hump to top 5, to playing the national championship, to winning, we do need to have those pieces in place at a receiver, explosive plays, to put stress on the defense, to be able to be that fully dynamic team that I think when you look back over the past 20 years of the national champions that they had.
What's interesting to me, because I've seen people put out their projected depth charts for Penn State in 2025, so it's like you take it with a grain of salt. There's a chance your top 3 wide receivers are all transfers. There's a chance defensively it would be Alonzo Ford. It would be, trying to think, Alonzo Ford, A.J. Harris, Audavian Collins, King Mack, who granted was at Penn State, went to Alabama, and then came back. You've got, and Amari Campbell, by the way, the recent transfer at linebacker from UNC. So you've got maybe 5 starters on this defense that at one point or another were transfers. Collins was a guy who was like a long-term project, and A.J. Harris, very young, coming from Georgia. King Mack's situation, bouncing around a little bit. Alonzo Ford was from Old Dominion. And it's funny that you're talking about, like, Clemson feels like one of those teams. It's like, we don't want to use the portal. We're going to develop. We're going to recruit, all that sort of thing. But they've even come around to that. They're using the portal. Penn State's clearly using the portal. It's about fit, and it's about development. It's about the right guys. It's not just about throw money at the problem and hope you fix it. But that is interesting when you look at this roster. Like, there's a good chance that half to more than half of the starting defense could be transfers for Penn State. And I don't think a lot of people would expect that.
Well, it's like when you see Fortune 500 companies turn over their CEOs, and the first thing that the new CEO wants to do for a publicly traded company is like increase the revenue or drive up the stock, right? So anytime that you get a new coaching turnover, instability in the program, they are trying to turn over the roster immediately to get from 4 wins to 6 wins, 4 wins to 8 wins, 5 wins to 8 wins, whatever they can do to justify that time of being a head coach. So that's when you see a lot of guys attack the portal, get guys out, maybe not a good fit, but looking for that microwavable solution, what I was speaking to earlier, because a microwave solution in real life is extremely simple. You get in, you press the button, but a microwavable solution in football is extremely nuanced, and it takes expertise. So that's why I was saying, even for like the receiver that came in from Syracuse, like it takes expertise in terms of experience of doing this a long time to be able to properly go through that microwavable process and be efficient on the field and put a product on the field. And I'm speaking from just putting a product on the field that fans want to watch. I understand how quick it is to actually produce the product that the fans want to watch, is what I'm speaking to. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
There's a difference between putting a fun team on the field and then putting a winner on the field. I think those are 2 very different things. Hop in the comments section, get at us on social media. Tell us which positions that you're excited about, concerned about, what you want to see develop over the summer, all that sort of stuff. Training camp is fast approaching, all that sort of stuff. And then we'll see how this season goes for Penn State football. But quiet time right now. Penn State continues to kill it on the recruiting trail. So not so quiet for the coaching staff, personnel department, all that sort of stuff. The Kennel continues to do a fantastic job, but we'll continue to monitor all of it here on State of State.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.